welcome to DJF Live. This is episode 83, and on today's show, we're going to take a look at the Stream Deck Studio, Bitfocus Buttons, and of course, there's an update to Companion version 3.4.0. So there's plenty to get through in today's show. We're going to start with a look at the Stream Deck Studio, which is a very exciting device that was just announced at IBC. So we're going to deep dive into that and take a look at Bitfocus Buttons, and then Companion version 3.4. So that's what we have on the show today. If you're in the comments, drop a chat. It'd be great to hear from you and see what you think about this. We're gonna have a look at the hardware and some of what I would like to see in the future, and then also the software behind it, and then also how to run that through Companion. All right, so let's kick off, and I'm gonna start by looking at Stream Deck Studio, which was new hardware that was announced by a companionship between, or a partnership, or companionship probably works well, between Bitfocus and Elgato. So you might be familiar with the Stream Decks. They've been around for a while, and now what they've made is kind of like a one U rack. This is just a fan here, but just to give you a sense of the size of what this panel is in relation to a Stream Deck Studio. So let's jump over here. Have a look at this. So this is a 1U panel, and it's got 32 buttons, which are a little bit wider than the Stream Deck. It's got rotaries on each end, and it's also got like a NFC, I think it is. So you can have a fob that will follow you around, and you can load up settings per your workstation. What's really cool is that this device is POE network connected. So it means that you can basically, like, you don't have to have a Stream Deck and then a USB connection in a very local proximity. You could run this a long way through a building, and then you can have a whole array of panels that are there for multiple people to use. You can also connect it directly to the computer via USB-C. So it's nice having that network versus local USB-C connection there. Here's a photo of some of them in a rack mount, so you can have multiple surfaces in a rack and sort of create bigger spaces. But I think it's a really nice design to be able to fit in a small space, be very configurable, and also to expand that out. All right, let's keep on scrolling down here. Oh, a couple of the packages here. We're looking at $900. I think that went somewhere for that, or you can bundle it up and get discounts off the total there. $899.99. Some more pictures. Scrolling down. Ooh, too far. Here we go. This is basically what the panel looks like there. 32 buttons. You'll notice they're a little bit wider than the regular Stream Deck buttons there. And the rotaries, and then it's nice having this USB-C on the front here, so you can actually plug in another Stream Deck USB device into that and extend your surfaces out. All right, these are the features here. Okay, 32 custom keys, and scrolling through here, the rotaries. So you can quickly dial through different surfaces if you've got more than, let me just trying to go down here. This is going slow. USB-C on the front to add in another Stream Deck, and NFC, so you can have a fob to authenticate different users if you've got this throughout a building somewhere. Scroll down. You can power it over USB-C. So if you've just got a network connection which is not PoE, then you could inject the power here. So that's a nice flexibility there. And then on the other side of it, you've got the PoE port, so you could run it solely off one cable, or else you could connect it via the computer here. So that's handy. And then rack mountable with the brackets there. It fits into a rack. Really nice design, and then works great with Companion, best with buttons. So we'll get into that because it does actually work both with Companions and buttons, and we can also try and sort of dissect what buttons is in relation to Companion. And you can also use other surfaces. So for example, I've got my, if I can pull back to, this one, sorry. I've got this hooked up here at the moment on an iPad. I haven't fully got some of the feedback. I'm not quite getting, but it's sending commands through, but it's for some reason the feedback coming to the surface. So it is still in beta. So something to think about there when it's not quite ready for prime time. Let me take a look here. So what else we got? I'm just scrolling through my notes here. So I think the use case here is really sort of a larger deployment. So you might be having a TV studio or just like some sort of corporate studio, or I mean any sort of size does work. But what they're going for here is with a rack mountable device, it'll fit into existing racks and also desk mounts. And with the NFC fob, you can basically have different workstations that you could sort of log in and only have access to the buttons that particular user needs, so that you're not getting more access to a profile than you otherwise need to. But it does actually work with Companion as well in the meantime, and then the Buttons software is still in beta, so it's not really ready to be deployed yet. I'll jump in here and I'll say there's two devices that I would love to see as a sort of follow-on from a 1U product. I think this 1U format is fantastic, but there's two things. One thing I would like to see is a network adapter. So here I have an UBSBot network adapter, and what would be really neat is to basically be able to plug any Stream Deck into the network rather than having to go over USB. So you'd have like a USB on one side, and then on the other side would be a POE injector and a power injector. Sorry, a POE network input, or else being able to, if you just have the network information, then you can add the add the power over USB-C charger. That would be a really great way to be able to like grab a Stream Deck and then plug that into the network and not have to run that through a computer or a Raspberry Pi. It would just make it very simple. Because the challenge that I've found is when you create a workstation, even like the one that I've got here in a small studio, is that the rack is a long way away, and so it's not accessible. And that's where I like these Stream Decks, but it also means I need to have a computer sort of locally at the desk, because the USB can really only go about 15 feet before it gets problematic. So it would just give a lot more extension. The other device that I would love to see is kind of a Stream Deck Pro or something like that, where you could have two Stream Decks. So I reckon 64 buttons, maybe 96 or 128. But basically, if you think about two Stream Decks side by side in relation to, that's how much a 1U panel is. Also in relation to a keyboard, so maybe not the extended one with a numeric pad, but just like a regular size with a trackpad, would make a really nice workstation to be able to type at a keyboard, have switching controls here, and then 16 rotaries across the top, because I think those rotaries really help and brings a lot more functionality to just like a straight button. So that would be a really neat surface that I would love to see ELGATO make, and for that to have the same compatibility in terms of, well, the same feature in terms of being able to plug in an Ethernet PoE switch into the desktop version of the rack version, and to be able to power that off the PoE network switch, or else over USB-C for the just for flexibility if you do want to just plug it straight into a computer. But the main, like the breakthrough thing here for me is, you know, in a rack format, that they've been able to have just a network switch in. So it means that you're not actually running anything on the Stream Deck Studio. It's all still running on a computer as acting as a server on the network. And then you can have multiple surfaces of different kinds, depending on what you need, that can be then input into to control the sort of the one interface. Anyway, so that's what I would love to see. Let's jump back to just going to jump back here and see what comments we're getting in the chat. See how we're doing. Where are we? Sharif, hello from Oman. Great to have you here. And let me see here. Emmanuel, audio seems a bit low. Anyone else feel that way, or is it just me? My volume is way up. Volume is set at under 30%. Okay, seems like the volume is good, and we've got Nico here as well. Great to have you guys here in the chat. All right, let's kick on to part 2. And I want to take a look at the Bitfocus Buttons part of this, because alongside releasing the one new panel of Stream Deck Studio, there's also been the Bitfocus Buttons. So you probably know Bitfocus Companion. So Bitfocus is a company, and they have an open source platform called Companion, which if you're watching this channel, you're probably familiar with, because that's a lot of what I talk about. And they now have a service that is similar to Companion, but has some differences. That is a paid subscription service, and that's really targeting users of the new Stream Deck Studio. Do you like my prop here? It's this is a AC Infinity fan, but just wanted to give you a sense of size in lieu of not having a actual physical device. Let me jump over to see if I can get my, okay, so back over here, this is Bitfocus Buttons, which is the software side of that. So it's basically the back end of it runs on a network, so you don't have to be running it, like it can run on one computer and then other computers can access it and other surfaces can access it. Dynamic routing, protected sections, a lot more functionality for sort of multi-user preset sections, which I can show you in a bit. Tagging looks really cool. I haven't actually been able to explore that. I haven't had enough time to look at that. And then basically what's powering this really is on the back end is all of the companion connections are accessible in Buttons. So Buttons is kind of like a new user interface, and it is drawing on the work that's done in Companion for all the modules and the actions and that kind of stuff, but it's sort of wrapping it in a new user interface and giving sort of new functionality for multi-user scenarios. And we've got the pricing's pretty simple. Sorry, it says simple here. Pretty affordable is what I was going to say. You know, it's just $9 a month for an individual, or you can have up to 10 services for $40 a month. And then there's Pro and Enterprise versions coming soon. So I don't think the cost is going to be a problem for people. And there's also a non-subscription one that you can get with a quote. It is in beta, so we will come back to this, but I just wanted to look at the core ideas here. So because you might say it seems very similar between Companion and Buttons, and how do they sit in relation to each other? I would say I think that the Bitfocus's Companion being open source is kind of a community project and benefits a lot from that. So Buttons is kind of their opportunity to work on a user interface that is more something that they will own and can monetize, which is good because they need to be a company to sustain that and to move the product forward. But these are the core ideas that are different to Companion. So advanced routing. So a system that does everything in terms of video, audio, VLANs, internal resources, all under the one interface. Tag-based management, organize inputs, outputs, and users, and more with flexible tag-based systems. Filtering and access control. So it's much more sort of dynamic, whereas Companion is very much like you put a button on a page and that's kind of, it lives there and that's it. This is more kind of building tags and filters and something more fluid. Powered by Companion, so it does actually draw on the Companion modules, which we'll look in at a sec. But you can also run different versions of those modules. So previously when you updated Companion, it was like everything gets updated. And if there's a module that's not kind of out of sync, then you'd have different modules at different points. So now you can have your system running and you can have your modules at different stages of development. Verified reliability, I think that means that Bitfocus is going to personally quality control check the modules, making sure that they're reliable, modern, secure, new interface. But it is very much in beta, and it's not, it's still a product that's in development, and you couldn't. I don't think you could go out by a Stream Deck Studio and just kind of plug it in and use buttons, and that's kind of a ways off. If you go to bitfocus.io and you sign in, go to products. So now you can see the lineup here: buttons, companion satellite. So buttons, at the moment, it's a free beta. So you can, as of, 9/14 is the most recent one, which was 2 days ago. So every couple of days or week, they're going to release a new beta, and you can download that for Windows or Mac. So I have downloaded that here. That's this one here, and it is running in, let me just see if I can pull this one up here. So when you open up buttons, it looks like this. So these are all of the services that are running, and then you can click open web interface, and it will spring you out into your new user interface of buttons. So I've been playing around a little bit. This is very preliminary, so I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what I've been able to poke around and find so far. Here's your dashboard. I guess the thing that's a bit confusing to a companion user is that I'm very used to having a buttons page, which is basically 99 pages canvas of buttons that kind of have, not a physical thing, but like they're a very static thing of like on page 5, these are the buttons. And there's 99 pages that we can draw across. Buttons takes a different approach where you've got positions, and so kind of each of these positions is a new canvas, and then you can attach surfaces to those canvases. Still learning my way around the interface here, but basically you would go to position and create, and you would create a position, and then it's by default is making a canvas of 16 by 16 buttons, and you could right click and add in a button. You can also, it's much more flexible, so you can actually click and drag, and then you can make a section like that filled with different buttons, or you can make a popover. So that'll be if you shift click anything that's actioning it. Same within companion. So if I like that, it's got one button that pops out there, but if I went down to the popover was 1 by 1. If I wanted to make that 10 by 10, then you can see I've got this kind of sort of almost like contextual additional button menu that I can pull into here, and then I can sort of create extra new buttons. So that's kind of the flow here. New buttons here, close that. And what's the other one? Shift section buttons. Yep. Okay, that's a bit of a look at the interface. Just gonna jump into the settings. Oh, this one I always find a bit weird is I'm used to in companion, every time you make a change, it's kind of already in there, and it's kind of, it just saves it as you go. This one, it's like you have to apply it. So every time you make a new button or something like that. Also, I do like just basic things like you can drag the buttons around, and you can also select multiple buttons, and you can command delete them. So it's just some of those things in companion are the things that I find the slowest, which is like if you want to copy buttons, like a whole bunch of different buttons to another page, you got to select a button, cut it, go to the next page, paste it, go back, next button. Like it takes so long. If you're doing like, a row of program inputs, and it's, they've got 40 inputs, you've got to do that many times. So, all right, so we've got our apply button here, and when we click apply, that is going to save that, and that'll be updated on the surface. And jump into settings here. A lot of this is not filled out yet, so general network media open specifications, not in there yet. Database, you can reset it, but you can't actually export your profiles or bring them in, which is a pretty important one, I would think. So like I'm saying, like this is very much a beta software at the moment. And then services has a list of all of the services that are running, and open source licenses are in there if you want to have a look at all of the different open source software that is being used. All right, next up is Connect. I'm going to go to the Connect tab. So this is kind of like you would have in Connections here under Companion. You might have come to this tab and added in a connection that way. In Buttons, you're going to come to the Connect tab, and you're going to click on Create, and this will pop out. And then you could type in something like atem, and you'll be able to choose different versions of the module that I was talking about before, and then you can add that in, or VLC, for example, and you can choose which one. It seems like they've only got one version at the moment, and you'll add that in. I've already done that, so I'm just going to jump over here, and you'll be able to add labels, variable keys, which is interesting, and tags. I think the variables and the tags is what is going to make a lot of this buttons more powerful than Companion when it comes to filtering and sort of dynamic menus and layouts of buttons. But similar to Companion, like you would see here of setting an IP, and then under here is listed all of the variables. There's a lot for an atem. And then the buttons and the actions that we have available there. I'm going to go to Surface. So this is my iPad surface. So if you want to create a surface, you'd come up here. Think of a surface like a Stream Deck Studio. So I come back to, where am I? Over here. So a surface would be like an actual physical piece of hardware, like, I know I'm holding up a fan, a Stream Deck Studio or Stream Deck XL, those kind of things. Or it could also be a sort of virtual surface in a way, in the sense of like if you've got an iPad, that's where you could actually have buttons that show up on an iPad surface. So that's what we're looking at there. And if I click on iPad buttons here, it'll bring me through to this layout. Sorry, I was going to show you how to make a surface, which is if you go create, these are the surfaces that you can create. So you can actually, I've been playing around with this with Companion running at the same time, so it might be the problem here, but I haven't been able to connect my Stream Deck XL over the USB, although I think it would work. But the iPad mini is something that I've created. So that's here, the iPad Surface. It's got a QR code, so you could actually like open that up on like on the camera app and just sort of scan that and get into the network address that way. So I can go open iPad view. Let me just see if, no, hopefully it's not playing the music. Okay, this is my very bad layout here, but it should do, this is what I'm saying, like the contextual menu should open here, but it's not. All right, I'm gonna get back over here, just keep on going on to this one. So I'm in Surfaces, I've selected my iPad Surface, and we're going to iPad Buttons, and now Position is kind of the actual buttons that are living within this little realm. I can select the root section and I can change the size of it. So I could make it 9 by 7, you know, if you want to make that a bit bigger. And then you can see within here, that outline here is where the actual iPad is going to fall. So I'm going to apply that. This one's disconnected. I don't know why that is. There we go. Okay. Oh, that is, it's being buggy. Something's being buggy in here. I've got some of the contextual menu opening up, but then it's just not refreshing. I don't know what that's about. Okay, so Down here is kind of like all of the assets, like all of the buttons that are being brought into this profile, position, whatever you want to call it. But let's go over to a button here and we can go to presets. Is probably the easiest way that people will start using this. And I feel like a lot of the work that Bitfocus will do is vetting the stability of connections and also the presets and things, buttons that are pre-built. I feel like a lot of the reason you'd want to use iPad buttons is because you don't want to spend a lot of time, you want to use Bitfocus buttons is because you don't want to spend a lot of time building a profile, kind of like you do in Companion, which I'm very familiar with. You kind of want it pre-built and you just drag in what you need. So here I've got 3 things that are connected here. I'll go to the atem, and it's broken down into element types now. So there's the button. If I just want to drag in, for example, the program button here, I could just click on this button and drag that in here. And so I could, go through and drag in each button. And this is kind of what we used to with Companion, very static approach of this button in this square, and that has its place. But you can also drag in sections. So instead of dragging in a single button, you could drag in a whole program. So see how this is all now one section. I'm going to drag this one in here and just dump it over there. And now this section, this whole row is filled with the buttons. And I can apply that. Hopefully that is it? I could probably show you on the iPad, but it's not fully updating. So we'll see how we go here with this. Let me jump over to this one. So this iPad should be what is updating here. Let me see. So because the actions work, like if I click here, then I've cut to my Canon 1, or I can cut back to my super source. So that the commands are going through, but for some reason the feedback is not updating on the device for me. I don't know. Okay, so we can drag in sections, or we can drag in a popover section. So for example, instead of dragging a whole row of buttons, I could drag in this program here, and I could pop that up the top there. And let's see if I apply that. Okay, so I've applied that here, but it's not updating here. If I refresh the iPad view, you can see now this is updated with this popover button, but if I press it, nothing has happened. And then if I refresh it, it's all opened up. So something's not going on here with the feedback. If I close that, then it's got to be okay. So you should be seeing that. But I can shift click this here, and this we'll just work here for the moment, because I feel like that's a bug that'll get ironed out in the next day or so. So you got this whole section, this popover section that is then available, and you can resize it. Where are we? There we go. I can actually drag this like that and drag this over here. So you could change the way your pop-out section works if you're trying to design it for a certain surface. And I'm just going to close that one down. Same. So if you click on the button here and go into the inspector, similar to in Companion, if you're clicking on a button and you were clicking on a button here, then this would be the sort of inspector here where you're coming into setting the text and the font and the color and all of the actions and all that kind of stuff. So on the buttons, I've clicked on the button, and then in the inspector section, that's where I can type in the text instead of, I could type in PGM if I just want to like simplify that. You've got button styling, so you can change the background color, you could make that red so we know that that's the program or whatever. So there's a bunch of things here: context, text, color, and background. Oh, there's also different types of buttons. So you've got just a text and icon one, or you've got an icon one, or you've got text only, or you've got this, I think it's called like a context button. But it means that up here, you can actually have two parts of it. So maybe it's like an SDI connection. SDI. I'm not typing this in very well. SDI. Okay. And then in your button styling, that's where you could add in a context text color of whatever you want the SDI to be. Actually, I was looking for background color. Background color of blue, and this one can be white. So you can have a whole row of buttons that are the same. So that's the button styling. Location is either float, static, anchored, or fixed. By default, it's sort of static, but what's kind of nice is you can have buttons that cascade depending on what else is in there. So I could make this one a float button, and now it's actually sort of popped back to the top. There's probably a use case for that. Off the top of my head, I feel like that gets a little confusing. And oh, wrong button here. Click on the button. Where am I going? Click on the button. Here we go. Just going to go to static, and the location is reset to 0. So it's kind of over the top of the other one, I think. I'm just going to drag the one down. It's kind of weird too, because like you saw there, like there's a button sitting over on top of another button. So I'm not quite sure how that works. Apply that. And what else? The popover can change the dimensions of that. Variables, parent, coding. There's a lot going on in here, which I haven't had time to look into. Repeater, plugins, items, and where is it? I was trying to look at actions. I'm just going to start a new button. Let me just go button, and I want, hang on, I'm going to click on the button, inspector, and then under, here we go, actions, add action handler. So this is where you would add like a down action or an up action or a rotate left or a rotate right action. That's maybe a little hard to find because there's a lot of other stuff going on. But for example, compared to companion, where if you click on a button, actually just create a new, let me just create a new button here. So as opposed to step 1, the press actions are whatever it is, or release, up, or if you add a duration group, I don't know if it has long presses. I didn't quite see that yet. Or if you turn on rotary, that's where you have your left, right, press, and release. So that is the same as in this section, where you could then add in an action for like set the program input or whatever it is. So plenty of like similarities with companion there. It is actually drawing on the same modules, so it's sort of to be expected, but a different sort of workflow of how to go about that. So what else do we have? The popovers, I think, and then there's a shift section. So this section here, you can create a section like that, drag to and go section. I'm trying to remember where I made the shift button. I can't remember how I made this before. Okay, I'm just gonna stick with this section that I made, which was this section, and there's a shift button. So this is basically going between the main or the shift. So in my main section here, we've got some VLC play buttons that I dragged in, and then in the shift, it's kind of like, imagine like holding shift, so you're going to a capital letter instead of a lowercase, that kind of thing. I've got VLC pause buttons. So that's the other way in terms of if you've got the pop-out sections and you've got the shift sections and the floating buttons. There's some of the different things that we have going on in there. Let me see if we've got any questions in here. Let me just jump back to, where are we? A couple of questions before we push on to the next section. Where are we? John says, oh, live demo time of the software, not of the actual, I don't have the hardware yet. Gwen says, lol to the fan prop. I was like, yeah, that also means I pulled a fan out of my rack. But, you know, worth it for the 1 hour of just sort of showing you in relation to like how big this thing is. Let me see here. Nils says, I'm a fan of the hardware buttons, but with the introduction of scrolling and defined areas, I wonder if future generations of Stream Decks will just be touch screens, maybe with rumble feedback. Yeah, there's probably a cost factor, I would imagine. You know, touch screens and maybe rumble feedback. Yeah, I wonder if that's, you mean like a haptic feedback like you have with the Apple devices? I like, for those who aren't familiar with the Stream Deck, let me just go in here. I could probably put in a, no, I'll put in a blank one so we don't press buttons. This is basically just a cheap display on the background, and then the buttons are over the top of that. So you get that sort of tactile feedback. But yeah, I guess it could be touchscreen based. I find these buttons safer still than a touchscreen, although I do really like having the iPad version of that. Because it just sort of takes the control away from having it to be in a specific surface, and it sort of lives in the ether, you know, like with triggers and things that are timed, or being able to just access it on any device rather than it being a physical one. John says, you can only connect one iPad at a time since it's surface-based pricing. So opening that on your web browser will technically kick out the other iPad season, if I understand correctly. Does that mean I'm in that already? Like in the trial period? Because I don't think I signed up to anything. I'm trying to remember now. But maybe if I close, what else did I have? Close my window, my web browser, and then can't remember. I feel like it was working before, and then something's happened where the feedback on this is not working. So I don't know what's going on there exactly. Gwen says, with the partnership, I wonder if Buttons and Companion will eventually be able to control Stream Deck plugins. It would be nice to have variables and triggers for Stream Deck plugins so I don't have companion modules. Yeah, I don't actually know what would be involved in that. I think if you mean the Elgato software, it's been a while since I've looked at that because I've sort of moved over to focus solely on Companion rather than running it via the plugin with Elgato. All right, let us kick along here. I'll switch my Stream Deck out here. I'll take a look at our final section here, which is the release of Companion version 3.4.0, which I'm guessing in part was to coincide with the IBC release of the Stream Deck Studio, which I keep holding up, which actually has a section here. So it's not totally a good prop, but you know, the width-wise it is a good prop. But the version 3.4.0 is out. I will say I have had one bug with it, which again, I don't know if it's just me. It could be just me. I don't know. But what I had was if I quit Stream Deck, sorry, if I quit Companion, which I'm not going to do because it's running the show at the moment, so I'd go quit and it would go through, but then this is still running here, but it's killed the server, and I don't just kind of locked it up, and I've had to restart the computer in order to open up version 3.4.0 here. So I don't know what's going on there. As I said, could be me, but it felt like a little bit of a bug here in 3.4.0. But let's get on to what we have. So if you go to Bitfocus, scroll back up to here, where are we? Okay, I'm already signed in. So instead of buttons, we're back here, companion, download. This is version 3.4.0. You can now download that for all of these different computer types and get up and going with that. So what we have is some notes here. I'll just sort of scroll through here. So things that have been added in here are, there's a zoom button here. So now you can, just like user interface stuff here, where you can scale up and down on that. The internal feedbacks, which allow for composition of logic. So that is, if we go into, I'm just going to delete this button, start a new button. If we go into feedbacks, add feedback, logic, you've now got, I'll just put them all in. Logic and if only one is available. So now you can actually look at different conditions. So you could look at atem tally program or whatever. And if it is on camera 1, then you could have it to change the text, or like it's quite a lot of levels that you can work with here. So logic is test if multiple conditions are true, or test if one or more multiple conditions is true, or test if only one of the multiple conditions is true. So it just gives a lot more flexibility in analyzing the variables, which are over here. So you could look at all of these different variables. Not custom variables. I'm looking at internal. So all these sort of things you could sort of compare if something is true, and then make a feedback look a certain way based on that. Let me go back to here. Extend expression syntax. I'm not going to go into that. Multi-line, multi-statement, comments, intermediate variables, and valuables. Value variables, I mean. Okay, add install name, user config in and show in header. I'm pretty sure I asked for this one. So that's up here. You can change the name of it if you go over to settings. So for example, I've put in DJF 4.1 is what I'm working on, and RF16 is my machine that's running on this one. So it means that if you've got multiple instances of companion running, like I've got a Raspberry Pi on the network, and I've also got a secondary computer that's running it. So if I was I think I'd also ask for a color in here, just to be able to like change the color, like purple, you know, of the bar across the top, to get this visual of like, wait, I'm working on a different companion installation. Because sometimes you can, if you've got profiles that look similar, but you're working on the wrong one, then that's easy to do. What else we got? Support per user install on Windows. I don't have Windows, so can't speak to that. Support for Stream Deck Studio, which we were talking about with our prop here. I have one new Stream Deck Studio, a VEC foot pedal. Oh, that does actually, does it? There you go. Pops up, open in, nope. I think it showed it there in that little pop-up. Basically a foot pedal. Let me just see here, this kind of thing. So similar to a Stream Deck pedal. Where did my page go? Blackmagic atem micro panel. So that's this little fella, $675. Or for just a little bit more money, you could get a Stream Deck Studio. So I don't know, you know, different use cases. What else we got under here? 203 Systems Mistrix panel. This is the first time I'd actually seen this one, but this looked really cool, and I was like, I kind of want to play with this. Mistrix Pro. This is kind of like a little lighting MIDI pad or something. I don't know. So I was like, that'd be really fun to hit buttons, and it's pretty cheap too. It's like $150 at the moment. So that looked an interesting kind of surface for a lot of buttons. Like that's 30 64 buttons. Yeah. Okay, allow surfaces larger than 32 buttons in satellite API. So if you're using companion satellite under here, that'll be, you can get into that. We just keep on going. Color variables in satellite. Fuzzy match results when searching for actions and feedbacks is simple but really nice, because it means that if you were typing in, let's say I wanted to put in an atem program, what would happen before is like no results would show up, because it was looking for exactly atem3 semicolon space me blah blah program. So it just means you can keyword search a lot more loosely, and it'll pull up a shorter list of actions that match those words. Update UI to the framework, visual changes, variables tab to the top level. So now your variables are sitting up here. It used to be under buttons and the variables would sit here, but now they've moved up to here, their own tab, which is where you'll find all of the variables. Where are we? Top level, long values in variables table, collapse readability. Add new wrong column to bank. Improve render quality of blank buttons. I have noticed improved render quality on the buttons. For example, I had on here, I've got this button which is updating with the time, and it used to kind of blink every time it was updating. I guess that was kind of like rendering each second. And in this update, it's gone, it's very smooth. I don't see that. Machine hostname, changing page by suffix index from variable, add new local variables. Actually, I haven't looked at that. Local variables. Local variables. I don't know if that's a new local. I don't know how that's different to custom variables. I will have to look into that. Option to duplicate steps in a button. This was something I actually asked for under here. So now when you, let's go back to my page, which has all of the things. When you create a button, the add a step has moved over here. So that has now got an add step or duplicate step, which is really nice, because just say you have created a long list of actions, like I've got here, step 1, all of these actions which are timed out, and there's delays, and there's all this stuff on it. And then maybe you want to create another step. I don't want to do much here because it's actually running my show. But if you hit this button, it will duplicate that step, and then you could like modify, one action from an on to an off. So it will make it a lot faster to build buttons that have multiple steps that are kind of similar. What else we got? Bug fixes, canvas, text failing to draw a loop, Safari drawing buttons over scroll bar, flickering, that's, I noticed some of that. UI crashes, some of that I've noticed. Font sizes. And then there's a whole bunch in here of modules that have been updated since version 3.3.1. So that is a bit of an overlook at what is new in Companion. Like this review says, quit works fine for me. So maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's just me. I did this several times though, and quitting Companion left it lagging, and I actually had to go into the action process or whatever. What do you call it? Action processes, that thing, and force quit it. Where are we? Oh, I noticed I've got to pull these things out. I've got some comments that are going through to YouTube. Buttons subscriptions at $9 per month for 3 surfaces, and next up is $39 for 10 surfaces. What's your take on the cost for small solo producers? I think if you need what they're offering, then that is very affordable, and I wouldn't, I don't know. I feel like it's the cost is a non-starter. It's like the biggest jump in any sales is from 0 to 1 cent, and so if it was hundreds of dollars a month, then it's a lot. But I feel like if it's $10 to $40, then that's a sort of nominal charge for what you hope would be a premium product. So it'll be interesting to watch it as it develops in beta. And like I was showing you, you can go in for now for free, and you can download the beta and you can test it out and play around. So you don't have to put any credit card details in. I don't know how long it's going to be in beta for, but it's probably weeks or months, I would imagine. But you can play around with it and see what do you think of the user interface. I must admit, I did have a bit of I've used Companion so much that I was like, oh my god, a new interface that I have to learn. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe that was just like my first initial oh my god. But I do like it feels, well, I feel like there's more stuff that needs to go on in there that needs to be developed, but it does feel more modern and intuitive and has a better flow. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. atem module now supports set. Let me just jump back over to here. Sorry. atem module now supports set art source based on variables. Yes. It's something I need to incorporate into my profiles because that does help a lot. Because previously what was happening was like there's some atem commands under, where are we? Let me go over to here and clear that one. So if I go to super source, it was like needing to build a whole page just to change the background art because the super source set art properties was like a fixed drop down, but now you've got set art properties from variables. And so what that means is instead of having the fill source as a number, like it can either be a number, so it could be input 1 2 3 4 5 whatever, or it could be a variable of, let me see, what have I got here? I think this is right. No, is that right? You either copy the short name of that. I can't remember what I had in here before. Like you would put in a variable that you want to control here. So I'm saying set fill source key and fill. Sorry, be in the fill source from atem1, but that would be a number. So I'm going to delete that because that is live. But that is handy. Using variables is so much easier than these drop-down ones because you can only target one thing at a time, and if you're trying to build multiple super source, then it just takes a long time. So yeah. Let me come back here. Nico says, I love what they did with the expression box. It works so much better than the previous version expression box. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Feedback, logical, and is just great. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff to go on there. Gwen says, plugins for Elgato software. I use it sometimes for things that are supported there but not in Companion. Yeah, I used to use it. I'm going back a couple of years now, because I was sort of using both, and also made some videos about how to run Companion and Elgato software at the same time. And the problem was you had to run Companion via Elgato's software and the plugins. So it meant that the primary, the Stream Deck was connecting to Elgato's software, and then there was a plugin in Elgato's software that was connecting through to Companion to create the buttons. And it just had a layer of, not setting up a house of cards, but, it was like more things that could go wrong in that chain. And so I just wanted to work directly with Companion being the host that is running the USB connection to the Stream Deck. And so that's the route that I went. And I don't know, ideally it would be like I could still run it through Companion, but then Companion could add in plugins. I don't know if you're saying that is what they can do, but that would be nice. Yeah, let me see if I can go into. I just want to test one thing while I'm here. This is probably gonna.
We are molecular device.
Oh, going down here. Interesting. Okay, so I'm trying out a new thing on with the YouTube plugin, which I haven't done before, and we'll see how this works after the. I don't know what the deal is there. So YouTube chapters, which I'll just drag over here so you can have a look. Sorry, let me just skip here. I think I muted that, so we should be good. All right, cutting over to this one. All right, so this is my YouTube stream, which I muted. That was an ad that was playing in the background. The chapters here are being appended as we go, and so I'm just trying that out with YouTube because that's in connections. You would go into YouTube, Google, YouTube, add that one, and then I won't go into it now, but there's a whole like authentication process through Google to sort of set that up. And then once you're set up, you can come into a show like this. So this is what I have on my, over here. So on my Stream Deck, I have a show page where I can monitor things. So I'm, recording on my atem 2 and I'm streaming through my live web presenter. And then these 6 buttons are the YouTube people who are watching. 27, thanks for turning out. So it's showing me how many people are watching, the stream health, and then I can also send chat. That's what I did at the beginning of like, hey, where are you joining from, to kind of get chat going. But you can also build that into the show. So, and I realized in the chat there were some comments that I didn't clean up from last week about the OBSBot that are like promoting the OBSBot. But good to know that they went through. I'll have to take that away. But what I've got here is as we're live and we're going through the show, although it doesn't seem like maybe it's anyway, it's being appended as we go, which is from here. So I had pre-roll when I start a show. I've like got a bit of what we're going to watch, and then chapters pre-roll 00 is preemptively in there. I don't know why this is not showing up here, but these should be chapter markers that you could click on, and they've been put in there automatically. And so what I want to do after this show is just make sure that those markers actually line up to the live stream, which is very nice and very fast way of doing that. So, and these markers are come from 2 things within my companion profile. One is my run of show. So that's under this Q button here, which I was showing you before under page 5. So I've got my setup, my show start. I've got 3 chapters to a show, and then I've got my goodbye and wrap. And that's doing a whole lot of camera and lights and audio maneuvers, but it's also marking, usually in Notion, but can also be in Google Sheets. And now I'm also trying in YouTube, which is under, did I put that under here? Yeah, okay. So you'll see like part 1 here is sending this YouTube send message to live chat. So that's send message to live chat, YouTube send message to live chat of your, I've only got it having 1 broadcast, so that's unplanned 0, and then the message will come in here. I'm just going to delete that. But it is OBSBot tail air affiliate link. That was so that when I get to this chapter in last week's show talking about the OBSBot, there'll be links that you could actually click through to for that. So I actually need to turn that one off. And that was in this button, but then for each of my buttons on page 97, this is how I run my show. Again, I'll go to part 1. So built in here, I have a YouTube add chapter timecode to description, which is putting in, so again, I've got the unfinished planned broadcast, and I'm putting in the chapter title, which I don't know if it's just within the 32 buttons, but there is some legacy text here of button underscore text underscore 5 underscore whatever is like the page and the button number. So this is page 5, button 11. And so I'm actually grabbing the text from that button and putting that in as the chapter marker. So if I jump back over to page 5, button 11, button 8, 9, 10, 11, which is this one. So it's actually pulling in this text, and then H2R list 1.1 is, if I go over to variables, H2R, where is it? Where is it? H2R. Let me just search for list. Okay, and then that's where it's bringing in a like text from H2R in terms of what chapter I'm up, and I'm using the lower thirds as my way of doing that. I don't know if that's getting too complicated to explain, but H2R, here we go. Variables, so when I set up a show, I've got this text variable, which is my sort of the name and the subtitle, like the episode, and then these are the 3 parts. So when I start a show, I type in what my chapter is going to be, and then those chapters end up in YouTube automatically coinciding with here. So at 2 minutes 40, YouTube has stamped that in as like part 3 or whatever. So this is obviously not working because it is, the variable's not updating fast enough. And so all of these are part 3 as opposed to being part 1, 2, 3. So I'll have to have a look at that. But previously it had pasted it for Notion. So anyway, something I'm seeing if that works, because that could be a much faster way on a live stream to get the chapter markers in there. And then the other, all of these comments here come from a trigger in Companion. Under triggers, under H2R comment, I've got an event which is on condition becoming true, that the graphic of my social comment, which is H2R graphics, rundown, where are we, this one? So that's like when that gets triggered, when that comes on air, then I've got a Notion timestamp, so I'm actually logging that in Notion, but then I'm also using this add chapter timecode to description, where I'm putting in the text of who was that person and then who was, what was their comment. So that's how that is ending up in this one, which now if because I just did Gwen's comment again, so if I refresh that, I'll just make sure it's muted. It is muted. And we look down here, Gwen 103, Gwen Park. So it's name and the comment there. So it just means that after the show, if you're coming to this at the end of, after a live stream, you can like scan through the chapters and be like, oh, I want to check out, you know, this part that they were talking about, rather than having to watch the whole live stream. Gwen says, and then that also pops up on my iPad here, which is how I trigger it. I didn't realize you had YouTube chapter markers updating as you go. Very cool. That is something I'm experimenting with. That must have been an update to the YouTube module in Companion at some point, because I've only just noticed that in the last couple of weeks. So whoever put that in there, that's pretty cool. And if that works, whatever these numbers are, I don't know why they're not getting auto chapter markers in there, because it looks like the right format. It's easy. It's just an easier way of doing it than the whole like creating markers and pasting it in, and it's, yeah, automated. We like things that are automated on the show. Where am I? I'm gonna come back to here. I think that's about it. I think that's about it for this show. So let's wrap up. Hope that was helpful in terms of seeing a little bit of look at Bitfocus Buttons and the Stream Deck. I was gonna say XL Stream Deck Studio. Really cool devices that are available now. And oh, I did want to say also, I feel like that just validates Companion, and it sort of validates that whole the whole automation and interconnectedness of studio devices. And so it's really nice seeing bigger companies like Elgato, Corsair, you know, getting behind things like Companion. And, you know, because broadcasters are using it in their workflow, and I think this is only going to not only validate that, but just sort of give it more development, and more people are going to use it. And the fact that you now have like a network switch version of it that can just plug into an Ethernet anywhere in a building is really cool. Hope they bring out a desktop version, 64 button, 16 rotaries. That would be really nice. Would love to see that. And also want to see an adapter to plug in any Stream Deck. That would be really cool. But until next live stream, take care, and I'll see you then.